Speaker grills are sometimes perceived as being a little tricky to construct, and there are a few specific things to look out for when building them. But as you'll see, they're actually fairly straightforward to make. And if you follow along with this tutorial, you'll probably be able to whip up some pretty nice looking grills in about a day or two. Thanks for stopping by. My name's Thomas, and this is Zarbo Audio Projects. The grills we'll make in this video are for the Overnight Sensation speaker system with the curved sides that I built in my last video. There's a link in the description. Check that out if you're interested. This speaker is on the small side. It's 6 inches wide and 12.5 inches high. So it's fine to construct our grill out of one piece of 1/2-inch MDF. If your grill is larger or of a different shape, you may have to add braces in the middle or possibly construct it out of something lighter, like pine. But no matter what size your grills will be, these basic principles will still apply. The first thing I need to do is cut out some grill blanks that will be about the same size as the finished cabinet. I'll do that at the table saw. I'll be attaching the grills with small neodymium magnets. So next, I need to figure out where to drill those holes. Since this speaker is smaller in size, I was able to print out a diagram of where to put the magnets on one piece of legal paper. I just cut it out, place it on the speaker, then mark each magnet location with a push pin. Then I punch it out a bit deeper with a center punch. Now I head over to the drill press and get set up to drill the magnet holes. I fiddled around with the depth a bit because you don't want them too deep or else they'll lose some of their magnetic mojo. A 1/16 of an inch under the surface is about right. I will be veneering over the front of these speakers, so I needed to factor any additional baffle thickness into my calculations. I next rounded over the grill blanks. I used a 1/2-inch roundover for this, but 3/8 of an inch would have worked as well. Notice how I didn't round over all the way to the back of the grill. I left part of the thickness flat, and I'll explain why in a bit. In order to transfer the magnet hole locations from the speaker enclosure to the grill, I'm using these. They're called dowel centering pins. They come in all different sizes and they fit snugly into a hole, then allow for the center of that hole to be transferred to another panel via that pointed tip. Now carefully place the grill on the cabinet, making sure it's lined up perfectly. Then, BAM! I use a rubber mallet to transfer the exact center point of each hole to the underside of the grill. Man, I just love it when I get to whack something with a hammer. So now that I know exactly where I need to drill, I can create the holes for the magnets in the grills as well. We'll use the same basic procedure here as with the enclosures. Here's a tip. Be careful if you try to test fit the magnet. Mine fits super snug. If you push them in too far, it's going to be really hard to get them back out again. It's a good idea to drill a test hole in a thin scrap of wood to ensure proper fit. That way you can get the magnets back out again easily. If you don't have dowel centering pins or don't feel like spending the money on them, you could place the grill on the cabinet after marking the hole locations on the grill, and then drill through both at the same time. You may need to fill in some material on the grill and fiddle a bit afterwards with the proper depth on each cabinet hole, but that is another option. Now if you want to go simpler here and just use standard grill mounting hardware like this, the procedure is mostly the same. Just keep in mind that on most of these hardware kits, the baffle and grill holes will be different sizes. The next thing I'm going to do is create a recess for the grill cloth on the back of the grill. If I didn't do this, the cloth would bunch up and make the grill sit unevenly on the cabinet. Here's where I'm going to remove some material. I'll do that at the table saw. And by the way, this is why I didn't machine the roundover all the way to the back of the grill. It's because I'm removing some of that material to make this recess. I'm going for a depth of just over 1/8 of an inch, and I'll make the recess around 3/8 of an inch in width. That should give me plenty of room to tuck the grill cloth in and give it a nice clean look. I'm taking a few passes at my table saw until I get the material removed. But you could also do this with a router table, probably in one shot. But what can I say, I love my table saw. I clean up these cuts carefully with the chisel. Now I need to cut the opening in the grill so the sound can get out. It might seem obvious, but when you're marking out where to cut your opening, make sure to take note of where your speaker drivers are so the wood part of the grill will clear each driver. Also, if you mirror the drivers on the baffle like I did with this one, be sure to take that into account when you're marking up your grill frames. For this speaker, I make sure to leave enough material on the sides to provide some resistance to flexing when I put the grill cloth on, since I'm just working with 1/2-inch MDF. Here's where you need to assess your own grill situation. If your grill is larger in size, then as you stretch the cloth over the frame, you may start to pull the sides in toward the center, so you may have to include a brace or two somewhere to prevent that from happening. Now I give them a quick sanding to soften the edges, and I'm ready to epoxy in the magnets. Speaking of magnets, I usually buy all my speaker stuff from Parts Express whenever possible. They're a really good company to do business with, but the ones I use for this project were actually purchased from Harbor Freight Tools several years back. They were the 5/16 by 1/8 inch deep magnets, and they were super cheap, like $3 for 10 of them. So if you have a Harbor Freight Tools nearby, maybe check them out. I suspect they may have bought a boatload of them a while back and still haven't raised the prices for some reason. Installing the magnets is really the trickiest part of this whole thing, if you ask me. And the reason being is that you just can't stick the magnets in there any old way. They have to be properly oriented north and south pole-wise, or else when you attempt to place your grill on the speaker, instead of it pulling down right into the proper position like we want, it will push off, and that's not what we want. I'll do the cabinets first. I mixed up some 5-minute epoxy and placed that into each hole. Then, in order to make sure that the poles of the magnets were all oriented the same way, I taped together a bunch of magnets into a small wand, which I put a piece of tape around. Then I used that to pick up each individual magnet and insert it into the cabinet. It made the procedure easy, and that way I could be sure that they were all oriented the same way. I did this for both cabinets at the same time, so each grill would fit either cabinet. Now we need to do basically the same thing for the grills, making sure of course that the poles are opposite so they will attract each other. So in order to flip the polarity of the grill magnets so they will be attracted to the speaker magnets, I just flipped my wand over to change the poles and repeated the same procedure on the grills. In case I didn't explain that too well, let me demonstrate what I mean for you. Now I need to get some black paint on the frames. And as far as paint goes, I just used whatever I had on hand. In this case, it was Rust-Oleum Satin Black. Here's another tip. Don't go with a gloss paint for this, as it could reflect light through the cloth, which would be seen as a shiny spot. Flat paints will be your best bet here. Parts Express has a large selection of grill cloth colors, so I would paint your grill frame with whatever color that's comparable with the color cloth you choose. While the paint is drying on the grills, I prep the cabinets to accept the Bondo auto body filler where the grill magnets have been slightly recessed. I cleaned out and scuffed the magnets with a small wire brush for good adhesion. You might wonder why I chose body filler over a wood filler for this. Well, the reason is that body filler is specifically designed to adhere to metal, which is what these Neo magnets are. Wood filler would never adhere as well, and it's possible that these circles would show up over time. From past experience, I know that Bondo does take wood glues just fine, so it's safe to use for this if you're planning on using veneer glued down with a wood-type glue. After the body filler hardens a bit, I sand it smooth, and this is what I'm left with. The cabinets can be veneered at this point, and you can see all about how I did that in the build video for these speakers, which I'll link to. But as far as the grills are concerned, I am now ready to cut the cloth and attach it to my grill frames. Here's another tip. Grill cloth has two sides to it, obviously, but they look somewhat different if you look real close. I try to get the most pronounced lines oriented vertically on vertical grills, but however you do it, you do want the cloth on both grills to be oriented the same way, so pay attention to those lines. It's little details like this that can really take your project to the next level. As you can see, I cut out enough material to make the full wraparound plus an extra inch or so. Here's another cool tip for you, and I'm going to let the big guy explain this one to you himself. What I've done is I've put some paper that I can easily get off over the front of the actual frame of the grill. And I do that because when you cover up your grill with the cloth and use your hot glue gun to apply the hot glue around the seams to hold it, if you were to drip a little bit on this grill cloth and this paper wasn't here, it would look really bad on the finished product. It would show up as kind of like a shiny spot and it would not look good. It would stand out like a sore thumb and you would always notice it. So a little tip there, just put a piece of paper, don't go crazy taping it on, but just a little bit bigger than the opening and just hold it into place just like that, so that after you apply the grill cloth, you can easily take that out. It'll come off real easy. As you can see, I'm using hot glue as an adhesive. Use an auto body squeegee to press the cloth down. It works great for getting a good amount of cloth pressed right into the glue bead. Not only am I using the squeegee to press down on the cloth for a few seconds until it sets up, but if you look closely, you can see that I'm also using it to pull the cloth a bit tighter to the frame. The thin edge of the squeegee works well for this, as it's less likely to stick to any glue that might squeeze through the cloth. You do have to work quickly at it, as it only takes a few seconds for the glue to begin to set up. For a larger grill, I would definitely glue it in several smaller sections to make this easier to do. Now, you could use staples for this, and I have done that before, but that always seemed to give me problems for some reason, and you only have tension on the cloth where the staples are, so I just use hot glue for this, and it's never failed me yet. You do want a little tension on the cloth though. If you were to fasten the cloth with no tension, it would flutter when the woofer really gets pumping, so do pull it a bit when you're gluing it down. Next, I tackled the corners to finish things up. I pulled fairly firmly and tried to even out the cloth around the corner. The glue has to penetrate several bunched up layers of cloth here, so A, don't scrimp on the glue, and B, make sure you press down hard to help the glue squeeze into all the layers of cloth. I used the sides of the squeegee here as it was sturdier than the thin edge, which just flexed too much to apply the needed pressure. After both grills have been covered, I can take my X-Acto knife with a sharp blade and trim off the excess material. That recess I made for this really makes this procedure super easy, as it keeps the knife centered in just the perfect position in that little corner as I cut. After trimming all the excess cloth, I can take out the paper that I used to protect the inside of the grill. You can clean up any bare wood spots with a little paint or Sharpie, and these are basically done. Done. So that was my entire process from start to finish. It's my hope that some of the techniques I showed you will help you out when you decide to build grills for your own speakers. If you like this video, would you consider subscribing and hitting the bell so you'd be notified when I post my next one? I'd appreciate it. Well, that's it for this video. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye now. If you like this video, would you consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to receive a note? Hi.